Okay, I want to talk about a unique kind of aspect of Integrated Rehab and Performance Center here, and this is part 5 of our exam process. So that's here. This is that swing analysis. When we do a full body comprehensive exam, we're looking at global movement here. We're looking at the Titleist Performance Institute's version of a movement screening specific for golfers. We look at every joint in the body essentially and look at passive range of motion to see which joints specifically are impacting the golf specific mobility and motor control stuff and this global movement stuff. And then if we have any pain, we also do an orthopedic exam and some special tests, of course. But then there's part 5. So let's start with part 5 with this golfer here. And let's take a look and see what we're finding in the golf swing that might relate to his physical restrictions. And so as we start into the swing, there's 2 things I just want to point out with this golfer. We're going to look at this green line here to start. And we are assessing for early extension. So as we start to move, he is covered, that line. There's no space between him and that line at the hip. But right as he initiates that downswing, we see this forward. And by forward, I mean from back to front, from his backside to his front side, off of that line. There's this move, and it really gets accentuated there. So he's kind of lost his posture a little bit, and he's early extended. And so we're going to see or look at how might your physical restrictions be playing a role in this kind of chronic issue that he's had, right? So big early extension there. And then we'll go to the other green lines here and look at the swing characteristic we're very familiar with of over the top. So does he have it or does he not? So we draw this first line on plane at address, and we draw the second line when he gets his arm parallel to the ground. So right there is where I drew it. And this is what we call that slot that we want the club coming back into. Now we see as he comes down, that club head is well above, really gets thrown out there, and then it drops down in there. Now, we call this over the top, but does he save it? And some people do a really good job of saving it at the last minute and getting it on plane. So he's in there, but now we're going to draw what we call the impact plane line. So this is right here at impact. We'll draw that line. We're seeing, does he save it effectively? If we go back a frame or 2, we would expect that his club is on the impact plane line, and we see here it's still over the top of that impact plane line. So he's coming in at the very last moment, really, in getting it in there, and this is what's resulted in a lot of what he has been describing to me as his chronic problems of ball flight. So here's impact, and now, again, if he did a good job of getting it back on plane, we'd expect this impact plane line to still cover that club 1 frame after impact, and we see it's underneath it. So it went from over to under, even at the impact plane line. So it's definitely a case of over the top. He does not save it. Now, these are 2 common characteristics, early extension and over the top. So we're wondering to what degree is there any physical restrictions that we found in the exam that might be playing a role in why this is something that he's been working on for so long. And so if we look at day 1, there's a few things that definitely make sense. The first is this hip mobility restrictions on both sides. So internal rotation specifically, he is missing on both sides. When we start to early extend, a lot of it is we don't trust that we can turn or coil directly into that hip. And so we lose a little bit of posture there and we start standing up. But also the body doesn't trust that it can send and create all these forces back into that left side because it doesn't have the range of motion to slow it down in that range of motion. And so instead you get more vertical, you start to early extend, and it chooses to use other joints, other muscles, other ligaments to slow things down, as opposed to getting into that left side and getting that weight shifted right to left, and instead it goes forward and back. Now, what has to do also with this, the big finding here is he does okay in global movement for rotation, not quite passing, but he's doing okay. But we see when we go to TPI, there's one really big common theme, and it's that his motor control over glute pelvis is seriously lacking. And this is a major connector to that early extension swing characteristic, right? A big correlation here. He does not have the ability to control pelvic tilt forward and backwards, nor can he control rotation at the pelvis left and right without compensation through the trunk and the lower extremity. And he can't even rotate through the trunk without while stabilizing the pelvis, right? So he can't do both. His trunk and that pelvis are kind of locked. Those 2 things move together. He has not shown the ability to control through that. Now, if we go back to this, Now we're talking about all this missing motor control here that has to relate to this early extension. But we also see a connection to over the top, because if you can't separate your pelvis from your trunk, those arms will kind of stay attached and the whole body kind of lurches and moves at once. And that's why that club kind of tends to get thrown out there. Everything starts turning together. It's all one big unit. We don't have separation, and that is a major connector to over the top swing characteristic. So we have some context, right? We know he's kind of mentioned these things. We're definitely finding it on the swing analysis. It's not my job as a rehab and on the physical side provider to necessarily fix these things specifically, but to give him and his swing instructor a body that is more capable, better capable of doing what they are asking it to do when they're drilling and practicing, right? And so that has a lot to do with not just cleaning up some of these mobility aspects that are missing, that you'd be really surprised, but also integrating these things back into the motor control. That's the big theme in this exam, the big kind of major link between the physical and the swing, is that he's really missing motor control over that pelvis in all planes. And we also see this lower quarter rotation missing, where this gets way worse. It's missing here on the table passively, but it's way worse when he has to actively pull himself through that as well. And then, of course, this glute bridge test, which just assesses general glute activation potential, and it's not there. So all these things all related to pelvic control, and then the ability to separate trunk and pelvis and lower extremity. And he does not quite have them. So first, clean up the biomechanics, the joint-by-joint mobility, integrate that to stability motor control stuff, and then get even bigger and integrate it to a really big global movement screen. So you really have the opportunity to move in these positions using multiple joints at once to do it. And that is how we put it back into the golf swing as well. From there, we're ready. We do some drills specifically to help him figure out how to use these things and create that motor control. And it's off to the races with a swing instructor to improve on characteristics that have been an issue for years and years and years. Now we have the body that can really fight back. So an example of kind of a unique aspect when it comes to treating golfers here at Integrated Rehab and Performance Center.